Dark Souls 3 is a hard game. It's very hard, but it's not impossible. A lot of the difficulty from these games does not come from actual skill, as people online will lead you to believe. It's very much a learning process of a game, where it's less about being like fast muscle memory, fast reaction time, that sort of stuff. It's more of just learning how the mechanics work and how the fights work, and learning how to pace yourself and manage your resources. This video is intended as a dumb shits guide for someone who's never played a Souls game in their life before, someone who's never touched the series, doesn't know anything about the franchise. The reason I'm choosing 3 is 1, because it is my favorite game ever, and 2, because I feel personally that it's the best starting point for a newcomer. So let's start off with right here in the menu. So we're going to select a new game, and we're going to skip the opening cinematic because you can watch that yourself. It's really, really good. Oh, my controller's plugged in and it's causing my dude to bug out. Let me quickly unplug that real quick. Did that fix it? Perfect. All right, so I'll start with your name. We're going to just pick a generic name like Bob. Your gender does not have any effect on your gameplay at all. It is purely aesthetic. I'm going to choose male. Age also does not have an effect on your actual gameplay. It just affects aesthetics. Your class is the most important thing to start off with. Regardless of what style of playthrough you want to do, I would recommend starting with the knight. I'll get into the reason why here in a second. Let's start with the stats. So level is just the overall level that you start off with. This can be increased using souls. These are your stats for different attributes. Vigor affects your health. Attunement affects your FP or your mana bar. Endurance affects how much stamina you have. Vitality affects equip load and certain resistances. Strength is used for big heavy weapons like giant swords, giant axes, giant great swords, that sort of stuff. Dexterity is used for more fast-paced weapons, stuff like rapiers and curved swords and stuff like that, even like small daggers. Intelligence is used for sorceries, and faith is used for miracles, which are the two of the 3 different types of magic. You can combine strength and dexterity for a quality build, as it's called. This will let certain weapons have more damage when you have them spec'd into strength and dex. Intelligence and faith you can combine together for pyromancy, which is fire magic. Basically, all of the pyromancy scales off of intelligence and faith, so you want to level up these equally. Luck, all that luck affects is builds based around poison and bleeding, along with item drop rates. This one is one that you're probably not going to touch very much on your first playthrough. Now here are the different starting classes. Knight is the most balanced, has a fair amount of starting HP, has a fair amount of strength and dex, a little bit lower on the intelligence and faith, but nothing too bad. Mercenary is also quite good, a little bit less health and attunement, but has a lot of dexterity, which is very important because the weapons he has, the Sellsword Twin Blades, can be the best in the game. The warrior is much more strength focused, a lot more health and a lot more strength at the cost of, also a lot more endurance at the cost of the other stats. Herald is more focused around healing miracles along with a spear. So you start with a lot of faith and a little bit of strength and dexterity and a little bit of vigor. You also start with a healing spell along with a talisman that you can use to cast that spell. The thief is probably one of the worst classes, to be honest. The knife isn't very good. The shield is quite good if you want to learn how to parry, but we won't get into that quite yet. And the bow in this game, unfortunately, is quite useless. However, this class does start with bow and arrow. The assassin is a much more dexterity and intelligence focused build. So you start with a miracle that lets you disguise your footsteps and also removes fall damage up into a certain amount. You get a staff, which you can use to cast spells, and you also get a small parry shield and a rapier. The sorcerer is fully spec'd into magic. That's basically all you're going to be doing. It gives you a ring that increases your damage of your spells and gives you 2 starting spells. The pyromancer is focused around the fire magic, as mentioned before. So you get a ring that boosts your fire spell power. You get a pyromancy flame, which can be used to cast spells. You also get a fireball. The cleric is also focused around a lot of the faith build. It's got a healing miracle and a force miracle, which basically repels enemies away from you, along with a talisman to cast the spell. The mace is also quite a good weapon. The deprived has the exact same stats for every single slot, only level 1. It comes with a very bad shield and a actually surprisingly fairly good club. In fact, this is, of all of these, one of the better starting weapons for the first boss. However, the setup of the stats means, and the lack of armor means that you're not going to be dealing very much damage. I would recommend Knight, because your starting class realistically doesn't matter, because you can take any starting class and to make it into any build you want. For example, you could start as a cleric, which has very low strength and dexterity, but then you can just pump all your levels in strength and dexterity, and it might take you a little bit longer to get to that point, but by the end of the game, you'll be functionally identical to other people who went strength and dex. You just had a different starting weapon. The Knight has the best health, the best armor, one of the best weapons in the game, a very good shield, and just generally is an all-rounder really good choice. So we're going to select Knight. Your burial gift is, for the most part, you're only going to be picking the life ring. The life ring raises your maximum HP by a little bit. The divine blessing is a healing item that will heal all of your HP, however, it only has one use. The hidden blessing is similar to the divine blessing, however, it restores your mana. Black fire bombs are what they say, fire bombs. They are the upgraded version of the fire bomb, and they do a bit more damage. The fire gem is used for infusing your weapons. We'll get to infusions later. The sovereignless soul gives you a few extra souls you can spend at the beginning of your game. The rusted gold coin increases item discovery, which means certain lower drop chance items are more likely to drop. The cracked red eye orb is used for PvP, and the young white branch can be used to disguise yourself as a piece of environment. And also, very importantly, a little bit into the third area will actually keep you safe from a giant that shoots giant arrows at you. So this is my preferred one to go for when I play, just because it makes my, because I like to speedrun this game, it makes my speedruns a little bit easier. However, when I select the life ring, you can choose from a multitude of face presets. They're all pretty horrifying to look at. These do not affect gameplay at all. We'll just choose this one. Build is the same. You can just choose how bulky you are. There's also sliders you can do. Appearance is just a whole bunch of settings for different parts of your body and what you look like. You can also save and load favorites. So I'm going to save this one we have right here, the plain doll from Bloodborne. So now you've got your character made, you've got your burial gift chosen, you've designed your character. I want to finalize the creation. I'm going to start the game. I'm going to skip this cutscene. And now if we look in here, we have sort of a layout. So if you notice in the bottom left, there is 4 slots. These can be configured in this window over here. So your right hand is your right hand weapon. This can be used or activated using the right click. For some reason, I cannot hear the audio, and I'm not sure why. Let me try and fix that real quick. All right, we've got our sound back. So yes, as I was saying before, the right-hand weapon is equipped in this slot right here. So any of these 3, and then you use the right-click button to attack. Or if you're a controller, I believe it's R1. Your left-hand slot is usually where you keep your shield. You can use this one using the right-click. Sorry, the right-hand weapon is the left click, the left-hand weapon is the right click. Or on a controller, it's R1 for the swing and L2 or L1 for the shield. You can also set certain items in this slot right here. So we have our Estus flasks. These restore a fraction of your HP. In the top slot, you can equip other items. Let me quickly put something in there just for the sake of example. Oh, sorry. So the top slot is for spells. If you have any spells, this character does not have any spells yet. You can use the scroll wheel on a mouse and keyboard to cycle between what you have in the bottom and top slots. And if you hold shift and use the scroll wheel, you can use, you can change by scrolling up what's in your right hand and by scrolling down what's in your left hand. So now that we have that set up, also on controller, it's the 4 D-pad slots. So those 4 little arrows on the side of your controller correspond to each of the 4 slots. So now we've got that established, let's talk about our movesets. We can attack in multiple strings. Your attacks will chain together automatically until you run out of stamina. So if you have a look at the top left, there's that little green bar. When you hit or do any action, it uses a bit of stamina. If you roll, it uses a bit of stamina. If you block, if you receive a hit, that will use some of your stamina. Now we're going to walk forward a little bit. There is an option to sprint in this game. So if you hold down spacebar on mouse and keyboard, then you can run. I believe it's you hold down circle or B on a controller will also let you run. You can use the middle click button to lock on, and I believe it's R3 on a controller. We're going to go up to this guy, and I'm going to show you his attack dealing stamina damage. As you can see, we took a little bit of stamina damage, but we just killed him. We can pick up his item using E or A or X on a controller. Over here, there's just an item. This is very important in these games. Exploring will give you a lot of stuff. You can get very, very powerful very, very quickly just by doing a lot of exploring. So we're going to run over here. We want to have a chat with this enemy right here. So I'm actually going to let this one hit me before I kill him. So he's hit me. I'm going to kill him now. I'm going to use the Estus Flask to heal. The Estus Flask can be upgraded using shards, Estus shards, and undead bone shards found throughout the world. We're going to pillage his remains and get the Ashen Estus Flask. This one increases your mana. Or not increases, but replenishes your mana. So when you use a spell, it takes up a little bit of that mana bar. You can drink from the Ashen Estus Flask to refill that mana. When I kill this guy, this is another very cool feature of this game, is backstabs. They're a bit finicky to get sometimes, but if you're behind an enemy close enough and you do a normal attack, usually that will activate a backstab animation, which will deal extra damage and put the enemy on the floor, which means that they will be like unable to attack you for a few seconds. Certain enemies can be backstabbed, some cannot. Let's look at this guy. I'm going to kill him. This weapon is really good because it has a very strong moveset. So if you go like that, you can see we have a bunch of sweeping attacks as our default R1s. To strong attack on a mouse and keyboard is shift and then left click. You can chain together your strong attacks as well. This gives you a stab and a upwards sweep. You can also use shift and right click to do the parry animation for your shield. This is very useful. Oh, nearly got hit by that guy. Let's quickly kill this guy. So now that we've got that sorted out, let's kill this guy as well. And this guy. Give us a few extra souls. As you notice there, the hitboxes aren't always the best. They're pretty clean for the most part. There are a few dodgy ones here and there, but nothing that will affect your gameplay experience too much. Now let's talk about the most important feature of this game, is the roll. If you hold forward and then use your dodge button, which is B or circle on controllers, space on a keyboard by default, then you can roll. During this roll, you have a brief period where you cannot take damage. These are called iframes, or invincibility frames, where basically the roll animation takes a certain amount of frames, which in a video game is the amount of frames per second being displayed on your screen. A certain amount of those frames, or a certain portion of that roll animation, you're invulnerable to damage, and you receive what are called iframes, where you cannot receive damage. This is very useful for dodging attacks. Let's go over here to this bonfire. If you click E on a bonfire, it will activate it. This means that now that once we set it, whenever we die, we'll respawn at this bonfire. For the time being, there's not much else we can do at these bonfires, but these are your checkpoints. Every time you die, you'll respawn at the last bonfire you rested at. Let's go down here and we're going to kill this gentleman. There's also a very finicky jump mechanic in this game. The only game with a proper jump mechanic is Elden Ring. But if you want a jump in this game, you're going to have to run, and then you're going to have to quickly take your finger off the jump, off the run button, and then press it again to do a jump animation. Well, here we've got a Titanite shard. This can be used to upgrade our weapons, so it deals more damage. Now let's go down here. You can also do a plunging attack, which is basically if you're in midair and you hold down, or if you click the left click button, then you do a plunging attack. Let's demonstrate the roll. Oh, that didn't work. All right, let's demonstrate the roll again. Come on, try and hit me. Oh, crap. I'm a bit rusty. I haven't played this game in a while. Come on. As you can see, that model went right through me, but I didn't take any damage because it was during my iframes. This is the first boss of the game, Udex Gundyr. He's actually a lot easier than you would expect. It took me a while to beat him on my first attempt, obviously, but I'm going to show him with like no weapon, just because I want to demonstrate some of his moves. So I'm going to click E to remove the sword from his body. And then there's a brief window where we can just wail on him. Now I'm going to demonstrate the parry. If you hit an enemy, or if you use the shift right click attack, or the animation on certain shields and your fists, then you can do a parry, which basically will leave the enemy in a staggered state, which leaves you for a riposte, which you can deal big damage with. We're also going to heal right here. I'm going to dodge his attacks, just show how the dodging works. So as you can see, he charges up his attacks, and then they come out pretty quickly. But if you learn the timing of it, where you can see what attack he's about to do. He's about to do a swing, and you know exactly when to attack. He's about to do an overhead. Oop, that one hit me, but you see where I'm coming from, where if you watch his attacks, you can sort of see they're winding up to do an attack, and you know when to dodge. Let's do another parry. These bosses are a lot faster in these games than some of the previous ones in the series, like Dark Souls 1 and 2. However, they do leave plenty of room open for you to get counterattacks in. As you can see, he's left several seconds for me to get attacks in. You can also just walk around certain attacks like that one, because that was a higher up attack. That means it'll go straight over your head if you walk. This one's a lower down one, so we're going to go roll through it. Want to punch him. Oh, he's punched me. Whack him again. Whack him again. Oh, he's doing another sweep. Like that. We'll do another parry now. So the parry basically works is there's a certain point in that swing animation of your shield or your fist where if it connects with the weapon at the right moment, then it will leave them in a parry state. Only certain enemies can be parried. Udex Gundy is one of the very few bosses in the game that can be parried. And most of them can't be parried in a way that's effective enough. There's certain bosses in the later game, especially the DLC, where you can parry them, but it's less effective and it's not going to help you as much. If you bungle a parry, two things will happen. You either take damage, but still get the parry off, or you take damage and don't get the parry off, but it acts as a sort of block, so you take less damage. Let's punch him again. Oh. All right, let's re-equip our sword so we can actually kill this guy. So we're going to dodge this attack, and dodge that attack, and we're going to swipe twice. As you can see, we actually do fairly good damage. All right, he's transforming into a second phase now. A lot of bosses in this game have a second phase. This basically is a phase which is usually slightly harder with a different moveset that you have to learn. It's usually activated around half HP, or in the case of certain bosses, once you get rid of the entire HP bar. So once their HP is empty, they respawn with the second phase, which sometimes will have more health, sometimes will have less, but will have a different moveset. This is something that you can either do your research on, or you can just figure out yourself by playing the game. The only reason that I obviously fungled a few times there, but that was a pretty easy fight. But I've also played this game for over 1,000 hours. So it's probably not going to be that easy for your first attempt, but it's very much about learning what attacks come at which telegraphs. As you can see, there was multiple times where he would prepare his glaive for a swing, and then he'd wait a few seconds, and then he would swing it. And the attack came out fast, but you saw it coming. So you get hit by that once or twice or three times. It's about, okay, that attack's coming. When do I dodge so that I can get out of the way of the attack and leave me in the perfect spot for a counterattack? You also don't want to sit there and just wail on him because you're going to run out of stamina. And once you're out of stamina, you can't do anything. Like if we have a look here, there's a few seconds between where I can dodge because I have to wait for the stamina to replenish. So it's very important that you conserve your stamina properly. We've also just received what's called the embers state. When you kill a boss, you can see in the top left, our little GUI is now covered in fire, I guess. And our body is also covered in little bits of fire. This is your embers state where you get a certain percentage of increased HP. There are items you can consume called embers that will activate this effect without having to kill a boss. But every time you kill a boss, you'll get a full bar of HP plus a little bit of extra. When you die, you lose this effect. Now let's get to the main part of the main hub of the game. The hub for this game is separate from the rest of the world. It's called Firelink Shrine, this very gorgeous looking place. We're going to just run past all these enemies, which is a perfectly valid option, by the way. There's a lot of enemies you can just run away from, and then they won't be able to hit you. Once we're inside here, none of the enemies will follow in because this is a safe zone. Now let's talk about what's inside here. So I'm actually going to unequip this flask because I'm not doing a magic build. There are a few NPCs in here. The most important one is this Firekeeper. I'm going to pop the souls that we got before. So I'm going to click use on these. And use on these. This gives us souls. if you look at the bottom right, we currently have 3,462. We're going to go up to the Firekeeper, and she's going to give you some text. You can listen to what she says. I'm not going to. You can also have a conversation with her about something else. We're going to level up, though. You're going to kneel in front of her, and she's going to do this little chant. And this will give you... This seems like a lot of information. But you can also see, very simply, what things do. So if we look at Vigor, you can see that it increases HP because that thing's highlighted. It also increases your defense to certain attributes. Your physical defense, your magic, your fire, your lightning, your dark, along with your resistance to bleed, poison, frost, and curse. But you can see that these are highlighted because I've got Vigor selected. If we go to Attunement, FP is highlighted along with defense resistances, along with increasing attunement slots. This is how many spells you can have equipped. Endurance and stamina, all of this. Vitality is equip load, which is how much you can have equipped. Certain items, certain weapons and certain shields and certain armors are heavier than others, so you're going to need more equip load. Otherwise, you're going to start what's called fat rolling. There are three different types of rolling in this game. We'll get to that in a second. Strength obviously affects your weapons. You can see how much it'll affect weapons you have equipped. So if we increase the strength, you can see it'll increase our right weapon 1 attack power by 1. We go again. It'll increase it to 126. We increase our dexterity, it'll increase it to 127. We're going to put, go like this. 14 strength, 14 dexterity. Oh, actually, wasn't it 127 before? Yeah, okay. We'll get to what that means in a second. So basically, we've leveled up now, and why did certain stats only affect my weapon in certain ways? So your weapon has a lot of stats for it as well. Most of these aren't too important. You're going to need to know what type of weapon it is, just straight sword. The moveset you don't really need to care about too much. You just test it out and see what you like. Don't need to worry about this. This is your weapon art. If you hold down, so if you two-hand the weapon by clicking F, or triangle, I believe, on controller, and shift and then right click, then you activate a weapon art, which is a special attack that uses your focus points. This right here is what attack or what weapon art your attack has and how much FP it's going to cost. This is how much it weighs. Durability isn't too important. You won't need to worry about this too much. This resets at bonfires. This is your physical attack damage with this weapon. So we're doing 110 plus 25. But what does this mean? This is affected by scaling. So if you look over here, there's a few attribute bonuses here. This one is strength, dexterity, intelligence, and faith. This one is its requirements. So you need to have at least 10 strength and at least 10 dex to wield this weapon. Currently, we're in the scaling is only D. There are a couple of tiers. There's S, A, B, C, D, I think. And then I think there's also E scaling, which the higher that scaling number is. So S, for example, means the more damage or the more points you pump into that stat, the greater the increase of like damage is going to be. So let's say this was a strength weapon and it had an S scaling in strength. Then you would want to pump your weapons into strength because that's going to give you the greatest return on investment in terms of damage dealt. Our armor, don't have to worry about it too much, but we'll discuss the rolls now. So we're going to unequip all of these. As you can see, our weight ratio here is 6%. This basically means we can do what's called a fast roll. This gives you more iframes, and it's also slightly quicker. As you can see, we're rolling around very quickly. We're going to equip this armor back. As you can see, we're at 52.9. We're rolling slightly slower. You can also fat roll, which basically means that you have too much stuff equipped and you will get less iframes and your roll will be very slow. If you have way too much equipped, then you can't roll at all and you'll just stagger in place. Let's talk about a few more NPCs. This is the Shrine Handmaiden. Let's quickly re-equip a shield for aesthetic purposes. This Shrine Handmaiden will sell you items in return for souls. You can also give her ashes that will increase the amount that she's, increase her inventory that she can sell. You can also sell items. So for example, we want to sell that sacred charm we got earlier. You can sell it for 100 souls. You can also purchase things from her. Embers, for example, these we mentioned before. Repair powders can be used to repair your weapons on the fly. You don't have to worry about this too much again. You probably will never run out of durability on a weapon unless you're playing the whole game without doing a single bonfire. These will decrease poison buildup. These are firebombs. They deal damage on contact. Prism stones, which basically can be used to mark certain paths. Homeward bones allow you to return to either the shrine bonfire or the last bonfire you rested at. And a whole bunch more stuff. We won't go into all of it right now. You also get some starting weapons here. The halberd's pretty good. The scimitar I've heard is pretty good. I've also heard good things about the short sword. The dagger also can be good if you're doing a parry and riposte based build, because with a certain infusion, the dagger does the highest riposte damage in the game. The riposte being when an enemy is fallen over after you parry them, or a backstab animation. That like sort of like they're on the floor and you stab them, that sort of thing to do extra damage. This is Andre, he's our blacksmith. Basically how he works is he can do a few things. He can reinforce a weapon, which basically means using Titanite shards to increase the amount of damage that it does by default, but also increase its scaling. So if we upgraded this weapon, we don't have enough for it right now. If we upgraded this weapon, it would go from a D to a C scaling, which means it would do more damage per strength point, but it wouldn't change the dexterity scaling. He also has infusion, which basically what this does is there are certain gems you can find throughout the world. These apply specific scaling attributes to your weapon. You also need certain coals to give to Andre to unlock these infusions. So let's start with a few of them. There's for example, the raw gem. The raw gem will remove all scaling from the weapon, but give you a higher base damage. This is fantastic for early game. I believe it's called a sharp gem will increase your dexterity scaling. A heavy gem will increase your strength scaling. A refined gem will increase both of the strength and dexterity. So you can use different gems to match the weapon to your build. So for example, if you want to do a magic build, but you want to have a sword as well, get like I think it's called the crystal gem, which will increase the intelligence scaling of your weapon and also cause it to deal magic damage. Certain weapons are only affected by certain infusions to a certain degree. So for example, a claymore, if you got a refined gem on it, would have very high scaling in strength and dex. But if you pick something else, like for example, a butcher's knife, I believe that's a weapon that can be infused. That one is primarily a strength weapon by default, so it will have less, it would be more worthwhile to get a heavy gem than it would be a refined gem. You can still use the refined gem, but it's better to use the heavy one. An intelligence gem, for example, will be less effective because even though it's now scaling with intelligence, it doesn't scale to the same degree as certain other weapons would be when infused with a crystal gem. It's sort of hard to explain, but basically the gems increase scaling on certain stats. Certain gems increase scaling more, and certain weapons can be scaled more. Andre can also repair your equipment. He can also use to be allot your Estus flasks, which basically means you can, if you want a magic focus build, you can do 3 into mana and 1 into Estus. This basically means you have more FP that you can regen, but less HP. Or the other way around. I'm not going to get rid of my Ashen for right now. You can also use Estus shards with him to reinforce your Estus to give it more charges. Now that we've done all of that, we've established that, we've got our weapon, we've got our knowledge of our NPCs, we've leveled up a little bit. Let's go to the first area. So we're going to place this sword in this bonfire. And we're going to go open the bonfire GUI. As you can see, we have a few more options now. You can attune your spells if you have any. You can burn undead bone shards, which increase the amount of Estus that is healed per sip. So the Estus shard increases the amount of charges you have. The undead bone shard increases the amount of healing per charge. You can also organize your storage box. This is an area where you can keep items to keep your inventory less cluttered. You don't need to use it. It's just for organization. Having more items will not increase your equip load. So you can have as many items as you want. The only thing that will affect by equip load is what you have equipped in this menu right here. What you have in your inventory, quickly back out of this. What you have in your inventory won't affect your equip load at all. So let's go to our first area, the High Wall of Lothric. Something important I forgot to mention there is that you can warp between bonfires, which basically means that in the bonfire, there's a little GUI that opens up that you can open up that has a list of all the bonfires that you've lit, and you can teleport to any of them from any bonfire at will. And here we have one of the most gorgeous views in gaming. This game has several of the most gorgeous views in gaming, in my opinion. But here's another bonfire. So we're going to activate this one. That one's been activated. Now, here's where things get a little bit more tricky. So this is your sort of base of operations for the time being. Your goal is to get to the next bonfire without dying, basically. So, and you can use Estus flasks as a very good gauge of that. So if you're like very lost, you don't know where you are, and you've only got one Estus flask on you, then it's time to... You can either choose to push forward to the next bonfire, or you can choose to retreat. You can also use this, the dark sign, to lose all your souls and return to the last bonfire you rested at, or you can use a homeward bone to return to your last bonfire rested at without having to lose your souls. There are two different directions. I'm going to show you which way is the correct one for this starting area, but very much the whole game is about exploring and figuring out where to find things. This direction, this one will not take you to a bonfire. There's no bonfire in this direction. This one, however, there is. So when I go down here, I'm going to kill a few enemies. Oh, this guy just hit me. Oh, he hit me again. I get very bad at these games when I'm recording, I've noticed. There's also a lot of items you can find by exploring. Let's kill this guy. There's another one down here. We're going to lock onto him. I'm going to dodge his attack. I'm going to use a poke attack because that is the best thing in this sort of area that we have. It's a more confined area, so it's better to use a poke attack than a sweeping attack because your weapons will bounce off walls. Let's kill this guy. Let's hit demonstrated, I think, on this one. Yeah, if you hit a wall with a sweeping attack, or any attack, it'll bounce off. So as you can see, the attack bounces off when I hit that wall. Now you can either go straight down there, or you can go around to here. I recommend going around to here because it's a very useful item. So we're going to run past all these enemies. I'm going to drop down this little ledge right here. This is an item called a gold pine resin. This can be used to apply a lightning effect to your weapon for a limited period of time, which will mean your weapon will deal more damage, specifically lightning damage while it's equipped. There are more enemies in here. Let's lock onto him. And he's dead. Let's quickly grab this item. Firebombs. Let's actually use this firebomb on this guy. So the firebomb can be used to deal damage to enemies, but it can also explode certain barrels. Let's quickly throw this one. I believe it's R. Alright, we've used up all our firebombs. Let's just kill him normally. You notice he has his shield up there. So he will take less damage when his shield is up. Some enemies won't take damage at all while their shield is up. So it's about waiting for their shield to go down or finding a way around the shield by going behind, for example. You can take this ladder, but I'm going to drop down. I'm going to heal real quick. So as you can see, we have 3 charges left. Now, I know where the bonfire is, but if you don't, for example, then this is where you go, okay, I've used 1 healing flask. I don't know how many more I'm going to have to end up using. So make the strategic decision whether or not to go back to the bonfire. However, we're very close to the bonfire right now, so you wouldn't even need to go back. Now you can go up here, for example. Oh, we just got a raw gem here. I'll show you that later. We're going to run past this dragon that's about to come down and breathe fire. There are several items here, including one of the best ones in the game. Also, this is an important thing. When you're using a door or opening any object, then you don't take any damage. You receive iframes. So you can't take any damage during that. I'm going to go over here just so that they don't attack us. Oh no, they're going to attack us anyway, I think. Yeah, the enemy's going to climb up this ladder. I don't think this one can. I don't even think this one can. Oh, maybe he's not even climbing it. What are they doing? The enemy and the AI in this game is not always the best. But yes, there are several good items over there, including the Claymore, which is, in my opinion, one of the best weapons in the game. You can see this guy's climbing the ladder. We're going to whack him. Oh, this one's climbing as well. Whack him. Oh, he's fallen off. Unlucky. Oh, this one's come up as well. But yes, as I was saying before, when you're doing like door opening animations, for example, or certain other animations, you receive iframes, which you can't take damage during. Unfortunately, enemies can, like, when they're getting off the ladder, they can't take damage, but you can. Down here is something very important we need to discuss. So I actually need to kill this guy real quick. Oh. Yeah, he does a lot of damage. Okay, these are chests. You can find them throughout all your travels. However, you need to look out for something very important. As you can see, the chain for this one is currently sticking out that way. You do not want to open the chest if it's sticking out that way. If you also look closely, you can see it slightly breathing this chest, because this chest is not a real chest. This is a mimic. This basically will, if you try to open it, it will eat you alive. You can tell the difference with a normal chest having the chain curling around towards the back, and a mimic chest will have the chain sticking out. We'll try and kill this guy, but I might die in the process. These are deeply horrifying enemies, and they also have not that amazing hitboxes, and they also do a lot of damage. Well, let's try and kill them. You also can't parry these ones, and I don't think you can backstab them. No, they're too big to backstab. He also has a grab attack. You need to watch out for grab attacks, because basically during grab attack, you cannot, like, dodge out of the way. You're stuck in an animation where you keep taking damage. You can escape it by using, I believe, the right and left bumpers. However, I've found that this usually does not make enough of a change for it to matter that much. He tried to spin kick us. Let's quickly kill him. There we go. And mimics, when they're killed, drop pretty good items. So this one is a deep battle axe. This one's infused with dark damage, but since it's a deep version and not a dark gem or dark version, it doesn't have any scaling. So it does dark damage and will increase in dark damage the more you level up. However, it does not scale with intelligence like dark damage does. So this one, has no scaling, but it has a higher base damage. Let's actually equip that one. I haven't used the deep battle axe much before. It's a very useful weapon. It's got a different moveset. So this one has sort of swings, and then two-handed, it has sort of also swings, but also a overhead if you do a heavy attack, and with one-handed, it has another overhead if you do a light attack. Its weapon art's pretty good as well. It basically buffs your damage for a little bit. You can see that there's a little icon below my stamina bar. That basically means we do a little bit extra damage for the time being. Now, right up here is where we'll find one of the tougher enemies in the early game, especially for newcomers. This guy kicked my ass and made me quit the game when I first started playing. This is a Lothric Knight. He can be parried. He can also be backstabbed. He also just hit me with his shield. He also just hit me with his shield again. He can be staggered, however, especially with a battle axe, which does so much stagger damage. So certain enemies can be staggered by hitting them. So they won't be able to attack while they're being hit, but they can break out of this stun lock of sorts and they can hit you. We've got another Titanite shard. We can use that to upgrade our weapon. Let's go in here though. Now, here's where I quit my first playthrough, because I spent ages trying to kill that knight. I spent literally hours trying to get to the point where I could kill that knight. I came in here, walked down there, and died. The bonfire is actually up here. Bada boom. Now, this is our new base of operations. So we rest at the bonfire. We have 4 Estus shards, or Estus flask charges left. There's also a Titanite shard over here, which is very useful, that we can use to upgrade our weapon. But now this is our base of operations, so we can continue like sort of branching out, trying to find the next bonfire. But we have something a little bit, we don't have to go as far anymore because we have this one as our new checkpoint. From this point on, there's not really much I can give in the way of advice except for explore and be willing to die, because if you're careful, you can die not that often, but you're going to die in this game. Like, it's not a game where it's like, you can't just make it easy. There are certain builds that will make your build, like your life, a lot easier. Like some builds are super overpowered, and you're more than free to Google what build you want. So for example, you want a really overpowered lightning miracle build. There is plenty of guides out there for how to get that and where to find them. When you're searching, I recommend exploring corners, because you couldn't see that item from here without having to walk over there. You couldn't see that item. However, that's an upgrade material which can be used to increase the damage of your weapon, which is extremely useful. So I recommend exploring. If you want to, Google or research a build that you like and go with that, or if you want to experience it for yourself, it's less about being good at the game, and it's more about learning. It's about learning where enemies are placed, learning what their movesets are, learning how to best deal with the enemies from either up close or at a distance. It's about managing your resources, managing your stamina, your Estus, your health, your FP if you're using magic. And bosses are tough. Like, the bosses in this game are hard. One of the hardest bosses I've personally faced in a video game is in this game. He's a gentleman a bit further into the game called Pontiff Sullivan. They are hard. Like, there's no getting around that. They do a lot of damage. They have like a lot of moves that you have to learn. but they don't require like twitch reflexes or super fast like movements or reaction times. Most of them have pretty like clear wind-ups to their attacks that you can predict, and you just have to learn when it is that you have to roll or dodge or even just walk out of the way of the attack. So that's basically all the advice I can give you for right now. If you have any further questions, feel free to leave them in the comments and I'll do my best to answer them. Thank you guys very much for watching, and if you like this video, feel free to subscribe. It's very different from my usual content that I do. I usually do a lot of Minecraft shit, but this is my favorite game, and I wanted to sort of like give a sort of like beginner's guide to it, because it's very much like, it's very much the hardest part is that initial couple hours where you're like, you walk in, you're like, I'm overloaded with information. I don't know what's going on. I don't know what any of this means. I keep dying. I get frustrated and quit. Once you sort of know why you're dying, it's a lot easier to not get frustrated by it. And if it's not your type of game, that's fine. Like, this series of games is not for everyone. I will fully admit that. And you're also more than welcome to use the summons. That's another thing I really need to mention before we go. So when you're embered, you have access to the online, which means you can see summon signs, which basically summon another player into your world that can help you. You can also be invaded by other players. I can't show you this, unfortunately, because my account's been soft banned because Bandai Namco sucks. But yeah, you can summon other players to help you with bosses. You can summon your friends to help you with bosses. You can summon your friends to help you with people who are invading you to try and kill you. But the multiplayer is a very valid and very like useful feature if you just want to like play through the game and beat it without having too much like head scratching involved, too much struggle. Because people online will be like, oh, like, summoning is just like, it's not how you intended to play. It's like, if it wasn't how you intended to play, then it wouldn't be in the game, sort of thing. If you're abusing a glitch to like insta-kill bosses, that is less like agreeable or whatever. But summons are part of the game. They're part of the experience. They're meant to be used. And they are not too overpowered by the fact that you have to be embered, which means you have to either kill a boss or find one of the limited number of embers in the world. So they're not too overpowered, but they're so useful, especially if you have a friend who's beaten this game before, who can beat the boss by themselves, even in multiplayer. However, you should know that if you do summon someone, then you will receive, the boss will receive a extra health to match the extra person. There are also NPC summons that you can summon, which are like characters in the game that you can summon to help you kill bosses that are tied to certain quest lines. That's something very important that I want to get out of the way before we go. Anyway, thank you guys very much for watching. Again, don't forget to subscribe and have a fantastic rest of your day.